Hi guys, so today I'm going to go ahead and do the assembly tutorial and I am going to use Maria for this. First I'm just going to go through the supplies that I have. Here I have glass beads. These I buy at Harbor Freight and they're 80 grit glass beads. They're actually bead, they're not crushed glass. You would not want to use crushed glass because it has sharp edges that can damage vinyl. As you can see, this is very, very fine. These are a lot finer than the glass beads you would get from Bountiful Baby. And these are my personal preference just because they don't crunch. Um, the bigger glass beads from Bountiful Babies, sorry. If you squeeze the limbs or anything, they make this awful crunching that I just can't stand. So I like these because they're finer, they have a good weight, and they don't do that, and they are actual bead. I have a funnel, and this is what I'm going to use when I put the beads into the limbs. And I have knee-high stockings. And you can use regular pantyhose that you'll just cut. I prefer these because I think that they just look nicer if someone needs to reweigh or something than having a jagged edge cut full pantyhose. I have cuticle nippers. These are what I'm going to use to cut the zip ties afterward. And I have a body here. This is a Bountiful Baby Premium body. I like these because the limb holes are sewn closed, so it's just a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about stuffing coming out and all that kind of stuff. I do have rings that I'm actually not going to use, but for easy turning of the limbs, there's a couple of options. You can use rings, and I will show you actually right now how to do that. I don't have the exact right size for Maria, but all of them work like this. You're going to have it this way, and they take a little bit of work sometimes, but you just squeeze them on. And if this was the right size, this would be a tight fit like this. And then you would cinch your body here, which would allow easy turning. What I've actually started doing in the last couple of years, which is what I prefer to do, is using, some people use super glue. I prefer to use this. It is just a cheap LA Colors top coat for nails. And this actually offers better turning than rings, I find, and I'll just show you how you would do it really quickly. You just take it and paint just the inside of the flange. And I'm going to do one so that after we assemble, you can see the difference between one that does not have this and one that does. And you just want to make sure that you have the whole flange painted, and then you just let that dry. I like this because it's quick dry, so it dries in, 60 seconds or so. I also have a couple different types of polyfill here. This is just regular polyfill brand of polyfill. I use this for the limbs and head, and then I also use this for certain parts of the body, and I'll show you that when we stuff the body. But I also have another kind here. This brand is called Angel Silk. It is very, very soft. It's a lot more expensive. But I do like using this for the tummy area in the body. It is a lot squishier. You could see it's a lot finer than the polyfill. And I'm just gonna set these aside so they're not in the way when we get started. I also have here Liquitex Ultra Matte Gel and some regular cosmetic wet rounds. My preference is actually not to use these, to use Moleskin, but I am out of Moleskin and waiting on an order. But these rounds, after we stuff and weight the limbs, I use the ultra matte gel. I just put a little bit on top of the limb here, push that down, and that'll hold the glass beads and the polyfill inside. If it's stuffed properly, you should not have glass beads falling out, but this is just an extra measure of protection. And the Liquitex Ultra Matte Gel, you can use other glues. This is my preference, and it's also what I use to seal hair and eyebrows and to glue in magnets. And if I were to glue a magnet into her, I would just, take some Ultra Matte Gel, put it where the lip goes, throw a magnet on there, use a pacifier on the front like so that the magnet goes in the right spot. And then I would take a little bit more Ultra Matte Gel, put it on top of the magnet, and use another cosmetic round, just pushing it into the head and covering the magnet with it. I know a lot of people use different types of glues, which I've also experimented with. I have found the E, is it 600 or 6000? It smells very, very bad. And when it heats up, it can move. So you will get your magnet suddenly on the side of the cheek or somewhere other than where you originally put it. And if you use like Mod Podge, that can crack and separate from the vinyl over time, also making the magnet move. So this is the only one that I have found. Reborn FX, I believe, makes a rooting glue, which I think is just a matte gel. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure, but I have seen it. It looks the same, it smells the same, and it acts the same. But this is really great, like I said, for sealing rooted hair. It really holds it well. It doesn't dry super hard. It still is a little bit flexible. So if you need to reroot or something later, you don't have problems getting through. Alrighty. So I'm just going to set this stuff aside for right now. And I am going to start with filling the limbs. And I used to use this crazy formula. I used to have a scale. I used to weigh every single limb and do, I did a lot of research with the percentage of how, what percent of a newborn does the head weigh. And I did that. But over time, I have found that when I fill the glass beads to just a little bit above the knees, a little bit above the elbows, it is actually the perfect amount as it was with my formula. So I don't use formula anymore. I'll weigh those and then I just do the head to to what feels right. So we're going to go ahead and we'll start with an arm. I just put my funnel in there. And I will take some of my glass beads and just pour them in. And you just kind of lift it up, let them fall in. If you keep it like this, it's only going to fill this part. You could see the glass beads there. So you want to make sure that you stretch the limb a little bit, move it around, make sure that it goes all the way down to the bottom of the limb. Right now, the glass beads are about here. Maria has pretty big arms, so I'm not even going to look yet. But normally, I think she's probably going to need 3 of these at least. But normally at this, after doing the first one, I would look and see how much more I need. And maybe she did not need a full 3. So her limb is pretty much all the way full. I want it to about here. So you just dump some excess back in the container. And sorry, my camera setup isn't showing that, but You'll just, dump a little bit, feel and look. And that is about perfect now. It is to right here, this crease here. So then I'm going to take my regular, firmer, cheaper polyfill. I have a wooden dowel here. It has paint. It's a little bit beat up, but I just use it. And you can just grab the polyfill with it and push it in. And it takes a little bit of work. Sometimes you push it in and no polyfill will go with it. If you kind of bunch the polyfill up, it'll help push it in more. You can also use your fingers. I just find this works easier. And at the end, you want to make sure that you really pack the polyfill in very, very well. And this will help with that. So while this looks full, I can still hear a little bit of crunching. You can hear that. And I can still move it around a little bit. So I want more, and you just really, really pack it in. I just can't emphasize that enough. When you think that it looks full, unless you're having a real hard time getting more in, you haven't put enough in. So this feels good. The top is nice and squishy. It feels firm. And I push with my dowel, I can still get a little bit of room. So we're just going to put a tiny bit more. But this one is going to be basically just kind of pushed up around the flange that's going to hold everything else in. So at this point, I'm going to take my Ultra Matte Gel. I have a real beat up brush here. This is just what I use for matte gel, and then I wash it with soap and water when I'm done. But you just want to go ahead and put some glue around the flange here on the flat part. Put a little bit in there on top of the polyfill. Take the cosmetic round and just flatten it. The cosmetic rounds are not, they're not much bigger than this. So when you put it in the body, it's not going to go onto the turning part. It's just going to hold everything in there. And then we just repeat. Since I know that limb took about 2 1/4, this time I'm not going to do 3, I'll do 2, and then I'll just do a little more. And you just want to make sure that they're filled to the same place. Again, just, stretching it out, moving it around. All right. And this is right to here, which is the same place as the other one. So then we're just going to start stuffing polyfill into it. Sorry about that. Trying to get the angle right to be able to show everything is a little bit difficult, so I'm bumping into my camera a little bit. All right, so this is really full. I'm just going to try to get this last little bit in there. All right. And that is good. That is perfect. That's pretty much exactly how you want it to look. So since this is just for demonstration's sake, I'm not going to glue all of it. And I'm not going to fill the legs, but you would do the legs exactly the same way as the arms, right to right above the knee. And then to fill the head, if she had magnet hair eyelashes, you would absolutely want to make sure that all that is completely dry. I would usually glue it and then let it sit overnight. If it's wet and you put polyfill in, the polyfill and the stocking will stick to it. If you ever need to reweigh the head, the customer wants the hair rerouted or anything like that, it will be a big pain in the butt. So I just put my stocking in the head and just wrap it around the flange like so. And just start filling. Maria is a bigger baby. So her head would be a lot heavier because I would want it to feel right with the limbs. With the stocking inside of the head, sometimes, it won't go. You'll get the end of the funnel stuck. So I just kind of pick it up and move the head around a little bit if you need to, just to kind of distribute the beads in there and make room for more. If you don't have a funnel, you can just pour. I just use a funnel because it's easier. If you just pour, you can get it, glass beads everywhere. These things are everywhere as it is. So anything you can do to minimize that is helpful for yourself. And if I was really filling her for a customer, I would probably make her a little bit heavier, but I think this is good for demonstration. All right, so after you do that, you want to shake it around. And you can distribute weight to the front or to the back. It's your preference. I usually do it to the back so that the head flops. When it is in the back, it will, it'll flop always. Some people prefer it in the front, but if you prefer it in the front or the back, all you would do is have, for the back, I'm going to have it face up when I'm stuffing it with polyfill. So the polyfill is going up. If I wanted more weight on the face, I would just turn it the other way and stuff with polyfill from the back. And it is the same exact thing, just stuffing the polyfill in. And for the limbs, we stuffed a whole bunch of polyfill as, packed it as much till we couldn't get any left. The head is a little bit different. You definitely want the head all the way full. However, sometimes if you overfill with polyfill, the face can get distorted. It can actually flatten the face of the front of the face. Like if it's overfilled, it can get like this. Or, there's other things, but normally it flattens it. So you want to definitely watch, how much you're putting in. You want it to feel full, but you don't want any distortion. So that's just something that you just, pay attention to. If it starts getting difficult to put polyfill in, then that's pretty much when you want to stop. So this is a good amount of polyfill for her. Nothing, her weight isn't shaking around or moving. It is all the way full, but her face is not distorted up. And just like with the limbs, I would, glue another one of the rounds on the bottom here and let that dry. right, so moving on to the body. The very first thing that I would do, I've already done it to these top ones. If some bodies don't come with zip ties, some bodies like I'll show you one here from McPherson's. They come with these really large zip ties. I hate these. I take them out and I replace them. I buy the 14-inch ultra thin long zip ties from a seller on eBay. I get them like this. They're like $10 for 50 of them. Way better deal than if you buy from anywhere else. And you could see they have the little metal clip. They are the same exact ones as Bountiful Baby, but for like a quarter of the cost. So I would go ahead and I just feed these through a little bit. I do not pull them tight, but I just feed them through to hold, basically. You want to make sure that you still have plenty of room, but it's just easier than trying to feed it through when you have a limb in there. All right, so for the very first weighting, we're going to weight the butt. Maria is bigger, so I'm going to use more weight, but I just pretty much put that in and let it sink to the bottom. If she was a newborn, I would just use one of these, which I think this half, this might be a 3/4 cup or a half. I'm not exactly sure. But for her, I'm going to use 2. This is going to be 1 butt cheek. I tie a knot. And then I'm going to put another 2. And then I'm going to tie another knot and just kind of put this through, and I just wrapped around a little bit to keep them separated. But you could see we have a little butt shape there. And I just go ahead, put it through the neck of the body, let it sink down, and then using your hands, just get them into the right. I want to make sure that I can't feel the knot. The knot is right here right now. So I just put my hand in. Here, let me move this down a little bit for you guys. I just put my hand in, grab the knot, and push it back in. Now the knot is on the top, so you can't feel it. So for this, which is a little bit squishier and firmer, I use some of my regular polyfill. I push it through on the crotch and underneath the butt. And you just do this in real small amounts. And then I'm going to put this, I want it over the glass beads, but I want it really thin. I don't want the, butt beads to get pushed into the center. I still want them where they're supposed to be. So I just do the small amounts. And that is that. All right. So then I'm going to do a little bit more of this firm polyfill, just, a handful of it. And I put that down so it's about 2 here. And then I'm going to take another knee-high stocking. And I want this one to be a little bit heavier than the butt. And like I said, Maria is a big baby. If she was a newborn, it would be a smaller amount. So I'm just going to do 5 of these. And I'm going to go ahead and tie it, keeping it in a long shape because it's easier. But I'm going to just kind of make a little well in that polyfill that I just put in there and let it all sink in so that it is round. It's just easier to get it in if you keep it long like that. And just put the stocking in. That feels like a nice, this feels like a really nice weight. So then I am going to take my angel silk, which is my nicer, softer polyfill, and I'm just gonna stuff it in here. I'm gonna do the back first so that the belly weight does not get pushed onto the back. And then the same exact thing on the sides. And then some more onto the tummy here. So this feels really nice. Now the shoulder area, the one thing with angel silk is I find it settles more than regular polyfill. So I want a really nice, soft, smushy belly. But, you know, in a couple months when everything starts to settle, I don't want it to look half full. So I use the firmer polyfill here in the shoulder areas. And that just keeps everything full longer. All right, so this feels nice and heavy. It's squishy. You want to feel and make sure that you can't feel the glass bead. You know, you want it encased in the polyfill so that everything feels nice and smushy. All right, so then I would just take my leg. You would want to make sure these are all the way dry. Put the leg in the body and cinch the zip tie. You want the zip tie to be tight enough that it's holding everything in, that you know you don't lose a limb easily, but so that you can still turn it. Okay. And then using your cuticle nippers, you're just going to cut it nice and flat along the top. You want to make sure that when you feel it, there's no sharp edge. If you did cut it at a little bit of an angle and there is a sharp edge, you could just, you know, nip it off. These bodies, this one is not great. These holes are really tiny. Even this tiny one won't go in it. But normally I would just pull the cloth over to cover that. And then the exact same thing with the other ones. And then you can just kind of sit her up while you do the others. And again, you just want to keep checking, making sure that you have your zip tie tight enough. You don't want a limb falling off, but you want it to be able to turn still. And I do send extra zip ties with my babies. just in case one does happen to come off, or if somebody wants to adjust them. Some people don't like the limbs to turn hardly at all. Some people like them to move all over. It's definitely a customer preference. If it's a new customer where, I'm not sure exactly how they like their weighting, um, I will make sure for sure that I send them extra zip ties, but I like to do it with all of them just to make sure. All right. So Maria is assembled. And I'm just going to show you. So this arm does not have um, the nail polish on the flange. It turns, but you could see the body turning with it. It doesn't turn as easy. This one turns a lot easier. Sorry, it's kind of hard to show right now. But all right, that is it. That's assembly. And you could see it's a little bit time consuming. That took us, well, a lot of time I was explaining, but it probably took us about 20 minutes of doing the actual assembly. But yeah, I hope that that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know and I will answer them. But I hope that this was helpful and that you guys can assemble the babies you're painting when we're painting Maria.